I think Jermaine might be out.
It would seem so.
I mean, this is a critical subject that we need to talk about. Energy management or energy crisis. A lot of persons were of the opinion that we are in an energy crisis. Some persons said no. Dwayne, of course, on the last, we're not in an energy crisis, but we should be concerned about energy and energy consumption. So, everybody tonight again, welcome to Canute Consulting Live, knowledge-based platform focusing on sales, talent optimization, general business news and trends, technology, and of course tonight, energy management. You're joining us live tonight from Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitch. Welcome everybody tonight. So I want to reintroduce my guests from my last stream, Tashana Braham and Dwayne Watson, both from Connect Critical Infrastructure Solutions based out of Jamaica, CCIS. Dwayne, Tashana, could you just reintroduce yourself to our audience tonight?
Good evening, folks. Dwayne Watson. I'm the CEO of Connect Critical Infrastructure Solutions, and I am excited once again to be a part of this presentation, this discussion. Um, Not a lot has changed, but a lot more has the energy sector has continued to evolve while everything is going on, and it looks like we're going to be in the current situation for a bit while, a bit more time to come. So let's see where the
Wow,
conversation goes.
wow. That's a big statement, Dwayne. We're gonna get into that as we go
Yeah,
along.
let's see.
Tash, Tashana, good night. Good
Hi, good
evening.
night, good evening. So I'm Tashana Brennan, and I'm the COO here at CCIS, and I am also excited for this conversation.
All right, cool. Thank you so much, Tashana. So let's kind of pick up where we left off. The last time we spoke about pretty much the do's and don'ts of energy, but let's just kind of the elephant in the room. Let's start with the most obvious question that most persons are gonna want me to ask: is the situation in Ukraine and in Europe is having the domino effect that some persons had feared? Now, I can tell you from the New Jersey perspective, we are seeing record high price for gas, record high for gas. Our energy consumption, if you commute from work day in day out, your consumption is not changing, but the cost is going up exponentially. So, Dwayne, has the situation in Ukraine, Europe, has really had the effects that a lot of experts and economists had feared in terms of the ripple effect of the conflict in Ukraine?
I would say yes. Largely, it has had the effect that was predicted. Um, what I think it kind of forces the world to now start to do is to move quicker towards renewables and alternative sources of energy creation. And I think now the world is in a much better place than it was. So if this had happened, say, 10 years ago, then it would definitely be crisis, and crisis at a sustained point. But I think now there are a lot of opportunities that are on the table for various countries around the world to capitalize on what is happening now and to bring forward some of those plans that they had before.
Okay, great, thank you. And what type of plans do you believe would have is helping us to not have that that collapse, as you put it, in terms of energy reliability?
So one of the things that's happening, and you see it largely in Europe, the US has also started on this years ago, but the US one has increased their productivity. US is indeed one of the largest suppliers of fossil fuel to create energy, and for Europe, which a lot of Europe depend on Russia/Ukraine for their fossil fuel to create energy, but largely Europe has always had plans to start to diversify their energy portfolio and to start to look at more renewables. And I think what is happening now is that they are fast tracking some of those plans. Now, I mentioned renewables as it relates to source of energy, but just to keep also in mind that they're also looking at nuclear power as well,
Okay.
because it's considered one of the most reliable ways, aside from fossil fuel, of generating energy. So those plans were always on the book, but this crisis has now forced them to bring that forward to the fore and to fast track some of those movements. So the world is turning in that direction. And fun fact, solar, for example, is the cheapest way to produce energy currently. It has never been cheaper now to produce solar energy. And as a result, we're seeing more people considering that, as well as other forms of energy creation, which can also supplement that. To keep in mind that with the Geneva Convention and the last seminar that everyone had, the G20 countries, they are now looking to bring forward some of those plans in terms of to wean themselves off fossil fuel. So I think now is a good time that they are working towards that, and I think it's looking good. It's looking very good. So yeah,
I think one of the things, because you said that solar is one of the cheaper energy,
the
but
cheapest.
the cheapest, sorry,
Mhm.
when it is that it just came out, it came out at such a high price. But I think a lot of people don't realize that with the technology that has been advancing over the past couple of years, it has gotten to that point where it's very cheap. So I think that knowledge base needs to also be out there as a narrative to say, yeah, initially you may have this in your mind, you were
Mhm.
shopping around to say maybe I could do renewable energy, but then you saw the price for solar and you're like, okay, maybe I can't do renewable
Yeah,
energy. But then years down the line, it starts to become more affordable, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of narrative around how affordable it has now become. And so
that
I
is
think a
true.
lot of persons have it in their mind that, yeah, it's expensive, I just can't do it. But I think proper research into it will show that, yeah, it's something that you can really look into now.
Yeah, and I think one of the drive out factor behind that is, again, China. It was originally, while the US originally developed the technology, China has been on the forefront of production of
Mm-hmm.
the panels, and it has gotten a lot cheaper. And
Mm-hmm.
naturally, the biggest challenge that would be worldwide is the factor of the sun. It's not 24 hours a day. You still have, you can't, it's unpredictable in terms of
Mm-hmm.
sunshine, as well as cloud cover, tree cover, and not everybody. You consider if you live in an apartment building, how does solar
Yeah.
help? It does not. So it starts to push some of those policy decisions back to government and local authorities to ensure that the policies that each country has, those policies are in place to support all of those environment, including areas like a condo, where
Yeah.
you don't have the space to put panels on your roof or wherever. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, but it's still a good time for solar, as well as other technologies that are being developed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dwayne. So I want to go over to Tashana. Tash, what from
Mm-hmm.
a policy perspective would you suggest um, the government of Jamaica to put in place in terms of this energy crisis?
So I think,
Because Dwayne kind of spoke about it from the Europe.
mhm, mhm. I think incentivizing, and one of the things that I just said as well is providing the knowledge of what the process is like for solar, what the costs are now like as opposed to what it was then. The information that they would put out there and incentivize some of these actions to build on the renewable energy base here in Jamaica. Also, the incentives that are already in place, because there are a lot of incentives in place as it relates to tax importation and GCT when it comes on to solar and wind and general renewable energy that the government did put in place. But I'm not sure how many persons are aware of some of those incentives, and as well as some small loans that you can get from even NHT, specifically around getting renewable energy. So the narrative around that, as well as putting in reviewing some of those incentives from when they were initially implemented to what it is now, and what the cost against those incentives are now, I think the government can look into yeah, expanding those incentive programs. They're also one of the biggest consumers of energy in the island, and so a proper path or plan to say this is the outline of how all of our entities are going to at least be 50% renewable energy, or even more than that, because it's difficult to say we're going to do everything renewable energy in certain government entities. But I think a path or a plan to have at least a major part of it
Mhm.
to be renewable energy is not just only setting the stage for our residential and other commercial persons, but it also will bring down our energy bill, being the largest consumer of energy in the island.
Okay, okay, great, great.
I just want,
I hope some of the government ministers are listening. Go ahead, Dwayne.
I just wanted to piggyback on that. What I think probably should start to happen is to not necessarily know, but future planning to start to mandate, I think,
Mhm,
construction to have some percentage of renewable energy. And to give you an example, Bermuda, for example, Bermuda's been a small island. They don't have many sources of fresh water. But if I remember correctly, it is mandated that any building that's been built, whether it's residential or commercial, should have rainwater harvesting capabilities, meaning that the roofs have to be built in such a way where it can capture rainfall when it does fall and store it. And that is
mhm,
mandated by law. I think we should start to look at that as well as a way to start to get people into the habit of doing with the incentives that you'd have mentioned, Tash,
mhm,
but also to mandate if it's 5%, 10% of the energy
mhm,
consumption or the expected energy consumption of a building should be
mhm,
renewable. And I think that is also something that the government should look into, maybe by 2030 or 35, 2050, whatever seems reasonable, because the technology is getting cheaper and it is being
mhm,
developed at a fast pace. So I think some of those policy decisions need to be made and to start to be put in place um, from now, because it's I don't know that it will get easier. I don't know that it will get any cheaper, meaning the cost of energy based on fossil fuel consumption. So, and to add to your point, government is the largest consumer of energy for a single entity. You think of your
mhm,
hospitals, your police stations, your schools, all of those entities. Those, I think they should start to lead by example. So that's
agreed.
definitely, I definitely would agree with that. And while Jermaine sorts out the technical issues that he seems to be having, I know years ago government had a competition amongst their different entities where they'll say, all right, which government entity can save the most energy? And I
I think I
think for a
remember
couple of
that.
years, yeah, I think for a couple of
Mhm,
years, EGOV won and
mhm,
NAA won a couple of times as well. and they were also incentivized, meaning the government entity, whether the
Mm-hmm.
price is a couple $100,000 or whatever it is. So I think that is also something that the government can look to broaden, and not just within their entities within government, but also to bring the private sector on board to say, all right, track your bill. How much energy can you save over time? And there is an incentive or a price for that. So I
So,
think a lot
Dwayne,
of it starts with government.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of persons will say Jamaica is a Caribbean island. We have an abundance of sun. Solar is the logical option for a country like Jamaica in terms of renewable energy options. Is that true, or are there other options that we need to look at as a country?
So Wigton Wind Farm, which a lot of people know, they went private the other, well, went public the other day. Solar is a good option. The country also has a lot of land space, especially government, especially when you get onto the hilly terrain areas. So wind is also a good option as well. One of the challenges that I think also faces energy producers like Wigton, like the private power companies, it's not just production, but it's also storage. Because if you think about
Mm-hmm.
solar, while we are a land of sun, you can generate sun energy from the sun through the day, most of the day. However, what do you do at night? So one of the things that I think is holding back renewables is the storage side of it. Solar being the primary thing. So whether it's batteries, whether it's stored hydro, whatever that technology is, um, I think storage also needs to be a part of the conversation. And by storage, I mean when it is that you have energy and you create it during the day, say the sun, you can get 100 kilowatts from the sun, but you only use 50. What do
Mm-hmm.
you do with the extra 50 that you create that you have no use for? Storage also needs to be a part of the conversation. When you come on to the
Okay.
nights, the street lights come on and all of that, that start to pull energy, but there's
Mhm.
no sun to power it. So storage also needs to be a part of that conversation.
Okay, definitely. All right, so Tashana, energy is not just about electricity. How business owners can really manage the cost of travel? Because obviously, fuel prices go up, the cost of travel increases. What can you do as a business owner to manage that cost? Because cost or energy is not just about electricity, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what we have done from our company is we took the pandemic, because there was a period of time when persons had to be working from home, and so we try to incorporate some of that. Even though that persons are coming back into the office, if there are instances where you can work from home or need to work from home, then that can also be facilitated in some instances, so that
Mhm.
kind of pulls back on how much travel you're doing. And our business is consultancy based. It's service based. So we have technicians going on the road. It's not retail where persons are coming into the office. We dispatch persons to go on the road. So there's always somebody on the road driving, whether going for material or going to a customer site, and on and all of that. So if it is that we have a major project, we would say, all right, let's see how best we can map out these major projects for multiple locations to ensure that we're doing things in the most efficient way. We're not going to site one and passing site two, and then having to go back to the office and then come back to site two. Map it out in a way where you can go to site two first and then go to site one, if it's in that order. So we
Mhm.
try to schedule efficiencies as it relates to traveling. When it is that we're purchasing vehicles, we try to look at how efficient, or even our major appliances in the office. I know we said that we're shifting from electricity, but not just purchasing vehicles that are fuel efficient, but if you're purchasing a fridge, is it an inverter fridge? Is it efficient in how it burns energy? Is the vehicle that you're purchasing, is it efficient in how you burn fuel? You really don't want to go to the gas station every week and see $15,000 on your bill. So mapping out some of those things is what we do as a company.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much, Tash. So another question, Tash, and this is not a trick question. Um, has there been an increase in your electricity bill for in the last year? And if so, what are the factors that has caused this increase for our audience to understand what's driving up the cost of their electricity bill?
So I have seen an increase this year, and I there are so many factors that you can put into play with the Ukraine and Russia. I really don't know what percentage of that to associate to that increase, because as I said, we're also a service company. We got a lot of major projects. Well, we got some major projects in the early part of this year, and so we had a lot of technicians on the road just driving up and down, and then we had persons coming into the office. So on one month when the technicians were out on the road, you see it kind of dip a little bit. But then on the other month, when you have persons in the office, or you have persons more than one person's in one area, so you had to have on more than one air conditioning unit, you'll see it go up. Granted, the fuel price would have risen because of the
Of course,
situation in Russia and Ukraine, but
of
there
course.
are those other factors that would impact the electricity bill as well. So it can be very seasonal, and as you know, even though we're in Jamaica, the winters can still be cooler in the nights and in sometimes in the days, and then summer it's just scorching. So then you have the electricity bill, and the pulling of the AC going higher just because of the season that you're in. So there are a lot of factors that can affect it. But yeah, the short answer is yes, there has been somewhat of an increase in the bill consistently.
Okay, so if there's anybody from JPS listening, we need to look into that.
Yes.
All right, so Dwayne, back to you. So
Mhm.
we Jamaica sits in a very peculiar part of the world. I think it's the most beautiful part of the world, in my opinion. You know, some persons may say other parts of the world, but I think Jamaica is seated in both beautiful place in the world, which is the Caribbean. Now, in terms of energy management maturity, how would you rate not just Jamaica, the region against the rest of the world in terms of the innovations in energy management and the things that you need to do to really drive down your consumption and your, because it sounds to me, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here because you're the expert. It sounds to me that the cost of energy is not going to be lowering anytime soon. It's going to maintain its current value or increase over time. And I'm hoping that's a fair statement. So I think most persons will have to focus their energies and their money on essentially having tools or infrastructure rather that's energy efficient enough, and overall management of your energy. Where is Jamaica and the region versus the rest of the world in terms of our maturity in the use of innovation and technology?
That's a good question. And having conversations with other regional partners that we have, we're seeing where there is indeed an uptick in the region to look at renewable and storage as a part of the entire package. Jamaica, I think, initially over the past maybe 5 years or going back 5 years, most people see their light bill and think it is what it is. I just have to pay it, and they tend to also look at the low hanging fruits, the cheaper thing, to change out to LED to try to plug out the items. And this is more from a residential perspective. On a commercial perspective, I think they are doing a lot more. More buildings you see are going up, and more properties you see being refurbished, that they are putting solar panels in car parks, solar panels on the roofs of newly built buildings. They are designing buildings to be more energy efficient, especially as it relates to HVAC. One story that I was told many years ago, and this shows the vision and foresight of one Michael Lee Chin. I was told that initially he said he wanted a gold building, and everybody knows that whether it's Atrium or before the NCB towers, you'd pass a building and all the glass seems like gold. And one, aesthetically, it's very beautiful, but it's also very functional. So NCB had the foresight years ago to say, I want one, the glass and all of those newly built buildings to be reflective, so it can reflect as much as the sunlight as possible. Because again, light brings heat. So that's one aspect of it. Also, the use of double pane glass, which is a thicker glass so that it allows less heat to pass through. So there are companies locally who years ago they have already started, and they started to look on that from that perspective. And I think more companies locally are starting to look at that as it is that they go through and they start to design a new bill. One of the things that Tashana mentioned earlier was by even just buying efficient fridges. Even when nowadays, when it is that we are doing proposals for HVAC units, whether it's comfort cooling or precision cooling, the one of the key drivers that you always hear the engineers ask, how efficient is this? What is my consumption going to be? Because a lot of these devices, especially when it come on to precision cooling for your more IT load, it's running 365 24/7. So you want those devices to be as efficient and as effective as possible with minimal operating costs. So I think Jamaica is now moving towards that direction, or Latin American counterparts. They have already started. Costa Rica being one of them that is miles ahead of even some US states and even some European countries. So the Caribbean, I think, is catching on, and they are doing a lot more than they did, say, 5, 10 years ago. So I think we are on the right path. And for Jamaica specifically, I think we're doing good. I think the government just needs to do more to, as Tashana mentioned, incentivize and, for want of a better word, mandate more energy efficient construction
I like
as it
that.
is
I
as
like
well.
that word. I like
Proactively,
that word.
because
I think that's the direction we need to go. Tash, go ahead.
no, I'm saying proactively, because Dwayne had mentioned the Bermuda, them being short in water
Fresh
and
water.
fresh water, and then proactively mandating the buildings to collect rainwater and use that as water. So they identify their lack of resource as a and then proactively put something in place to be able to capitalize on that. So identifying our actual resource as the sun, because some of the problems in some of these islands or countries is that you don't have sun right around the clock. But for the most part, Jamaica is sunny. So that in itself is a very good resource. So proactively mandating some of these things by law will see the country moving toward renewable energy just at the base. Because if you build a house and say it has to, a percentage of it has to be renewable, then that's the law. Your plans have to be sorted. You have to sign off.
Correct.
That is the law. And persons, if it is that it was 10 years ago, when it is that it was a ridiculous cost, and you mandate something like that, I can understand the upset that it will bring. But with the cost coming down and um, the approach to probably bring in some of these incentives, to mandate something like that may be an easier pill to swallow. And for the long term, it will be very beneficial to the country.
I agree. I agree 100%. So Tash, I'm gonna come back to you. What policies and general procedures would you recommend to businesses locally to manage their energy?
So, in the last stream, we talked a lot about monitoring, and I'll always recommend you start there. Always keep monitoring how it is that you dispel your energy in whatever way. There are devices out there. You can get devices from us. Sorry, and
It's a
you
cold plug. It's a cold plug.
yes. So there are many avenues that you can go about monitoring your energy in order to manage your energy. So I would say start there. There are some larger companies that may be able to centralize like their AC unit, as opposed to having 5, 6, 7 AC units scattered over the place with 5, 6, 7 persons having different remotes and managing it just based on their body temperature. I think centralizing some of those units that would pull a lot of energy and put skyrocket your bill, that would also be an approach. That's not for everybody, but where it can be done, I would recommend that. I would one of the things that I said about fuel efficient cars or
Teslas.
appliances, I would say, um,
Teslas.
well, for those who can afford it, I would
True,
say,
true, true.
um, in your purchasing department, start from there and mandate that anything that is bought within the company needs to be fuel efficient. It needs to run at a particular rate. The vehicles that you buy, any major appliances, especially appliances that you'll be using continuously or consistently, like the fridge that don't plug out or the AC that meet in your server room or there or just in the office that needs to run consistently. Just ensure that they're fuel efficient. I would say as well, HR or any other entity that would deal with administration to send out helpful tips to the staff on how they can
Yes,
reduce
yes,
their energy, and
yes.
not just in the office, but you acknowledge that persons are also at home and you're helping from a business perspective both here and at home to reduce your energy, just on a general basis, that will eventually become a part of the culture, because change is difficult unless it becomes a part of the culture, and consistently doing some of these activities will eventually see these actions becoming a part of the company culture. And Dwayne had mentioned about the government having an incentive program to reducing the energy. I remember one of my previous employment, we also did something similar to that, where departments were looking at how it is that within their space they could come up with plans on how to reduce energy or inventive ways on what we could do to bring down the electricity bill, and it was fun as well as beneficial to the company. So I think some of those general things would help in managing energy.
Okay, great, great, great. So I'm gonna go back to Dwayne here for the question. In closing, to ask you again, are we in an energy crisis? Yes or no?
That's a flat no. That's a flat no for
That's
me.
a
And
flat no.
I wanted to just add to, in addition to what Tash mentioned in terms of the transportation side of it.
Hmm.
Again, if I remember correctly, even for Bermuda, four-cylinder vehicle is standard. To bring in anything bigger with a bigger engine, you need a special permit for that. So whether it's because you're transporting goods and services, whether it is that you're transporting people, the standard is a four-cylinder engine, which is a smaller engine. So they recognize some of their challenges, and some of those things are mandated. So you drive around Bermuda, you're not going to necessarily see a eight-cylinder or a six-cylinder engine as often. Rare is the day. So it's always the small cars and the small engines, because again, they recognize some of those challenges and they have started to put things in place. So we can learn a thing or two from some of our neighbors. Not everything will fit perfectly for our environment, our culture, but there are ways to manage it. And as you said in the last stream, it's an opportunity to bring some of these plans that you have to bring it forward, recognizing the challenges that we currently have and the fact that some of those challenges will be with us for quite a while.
Okay, you heard it from the man himself. So the persons listening out there, if this anything that we're talking about tonight resonates with you from your business perspective, I don't know any business owner who doesn't want to be more efficient and save money. But for the persons who do not wish to save money, obviously this would not be relevant to you. But for the other 99.99999 persons out there, I believe this discussion will be fruitful. If you need more information, please feel free to reach out to Connect Critical Infrastructure Solutions on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or just put them in your Google bar and you'll see the contact information to reach out to have more candid and detailed conversations in terms of how can we assist you to manage your business and make your business more energy efficient and of course save money in the long run. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Dwayne and Tashana for this wonderful discussion tonight. Canute Consulting Live. We had some technical difficulties tonight, but we got through the stream fine. I think we hit the points that we wanted to hit. I think the conversation was a very fruitful and purposeful one in terms of the current state of energy and where we're going in terms of energy consumption, right? So, guys, good night. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good one. Catch you later. Bye.
Bye.